turn up. That's great. Okay. As soon as he turns up.
The weather's bad, traffic's bad.
Okay, we're broadcasting live now, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Welcome everybody to our strategy group this evening. Appreciate you taking time to meet and to discuss the business of the council. Just a few housekeeping, please. Will all be muted. Cheverly, if you could arrange that when appropriate. And if you could also keep your cameras on, not only for the benefit of each other, but also for the benefit of the public who may be viewing this broadcast. So, Cheverly, before we start, you like to have a roll call, is that correct?
Yes, I know we've got apologies from Councillor Adam Brown. If you could just, the rest of you could just confirm that you've got audio and visual. So, Councillor Auger.
Yes to both, thank you.
Councillor Chartler.
Hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Councillor Cribbin.
Yes to both.
Councillor Guildford.
Yes to both.
Councillor Hills. You're on mute, Councillor Hills, but I know that you were speaking to us not long ago. So, Councillor James.
Yes to both.
Councillor Lomax.
Confirm both.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan.
Yes to both.
Councillor Osborne.
Yes, yes.
Councillor Randall's not here yet. Councillor Smith.
Yes, all good, thank you.
Okay, was that it? That's everyone, Cheverly. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, when the minutes eventually get to sign, is everyone happy for me to sign them as an accurate record?
Agreed.
Thank you, Rennie. Good. Okay, and apologies to say, just Councillor Brown, and we haven't heard from Councillor Randall, but she's not here as yet. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. Declarations of interest, please. Please, obviously, if you have any disclosable interest and the nature of that interest is in any of the following agenda items, if you can please ensure that you declare that, please, either prior or during the item. Thank you. Okay, straight into the business of the day, and they are all strategic planning issues. So I'll hand over to Councillor Chartler for the Badbury Conservation Area designation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Members will, I hope, be familiar with this process. I thought it might save a bit of time, Chairman, if I made a general statement at the beginning of this evening's group, simply to say that consultation has been rather difficult recently, as you might imagine. All of these conservation areas went out for consultation at the beginning of March last year, and within a fortnight, lockdown had happened, which of course interfered with the consultation. So when the first lockdown was listed, it was decided later on to go for a second consultation, which happened at the end of the year and into January. We have also made allowance for the fact that there have been difficulties with the postal service in Daventry, sorting office in particular. So any late arrivals in the post of consultation responses have been checked to see that they were posted before the deadline and then taken into consideration. That will apply to all four, Chairman. So we begin with Badby. Excuse me. As you all know, we have this statutory duty to review and conservation areas and designate new ones. And in the 5th of March 2020, we resolved that consultation should take place on the Badby conservation area appraisal and management plan. This has happened under the difficulties that we had. Instead of having a public meeting, we had a virtual meeting, an online session that people could join. During the consultation for Badby, 4 responses were received. both via email and via an online survey. And you can see, if you wish, that the consultation responses are listed in Appendix A, together with the comments from the staff as to whether or not they require any changes. As a result of the consultation, 8 amendments were made to the conservation area, extensions, changes to the boundary, some extensions and a couple of reductions. There's 3 in the papers, but you know me by now. A man of Kent thinks there's a couple is any number between 2 and 5. So the responses and the officers' way of dealing with them have been processed as listed in the appendices. There are no suggested changes as a result of the consultation exercise as far as the Article 4 directions are concerned. Do remember, please, that Article 4 directions apply specific restrictions on permitted development to specific properties. They don't apply to the whole of a conservation area, as people seem to imagine. We've had a few comments in the consultations from people saying the consultation wasn't wide enough or far-reaching enough, and usually what they mean by that is you didn't come and knock on my door and ask me for my opinion, or you write to me, and of course that's not part of the process. As a result, Chairman, the amended conservation area designation, appraisal and management plan is proposed to be as set out. So the recommendations for council will be that the proposed conservation area boundary be designated, that the proposed changes be, in response to the consultation, be approved, that the further minor editorial changes to make it a publishable document be made, that the conservation area appraisal and management plan be adopted as a supplementary planning document, that the local list entries for Badby as set out in the Appendix D be agreed, and that the list of Article 4 directions be made, and then they will be subject to later consultation before being confirmed. Those are the recommendations for Council, Chairman. I share the disappointment of the staff that they won't be going for approval to Council in March, because that Council has been cancelled. February has been cancelled, so there will be a delay, but that's the recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Any speakers, please?
Yes, wherever I am.
Okay, Councillor Lomax, please.
Oh, thank you. Yes, Chairman, this applies, my comments apply to all 4 of the reports before us this evening. What I wanted to say, first of all, was my very heartfelt congratulations to the staff for what they have managed to achieve in a very difficult period of time. I think it's absolutely marvellous what they have managed to do. Now to be congratulated for the quality of the reports. What also I wanted to ask was, in all of the reports, apart from that for Long Buckby, when we were helped by one of the respondents, can I know how many people actually were at the Zoomed meetings in relation to these areas? And secondly, how many more conservation areas are actually in the pipeline, and at what stage are they at, and will they be carried forward? Absolutely, certainly carried forward. Thank you.
Okay, Alan, are you able to deal with any of those?
I don't have the figures Chairman. Perhaps Simon does, but I can say that it is my understanding that there are still some conservation area appraisals in the pipeline, and those that can't be dealt with by this council will be passed on to the successor authority processing. But perhaps that we could ask Simon Bowers if he has those figures to hand or could get them.
Thank you, Alan. Simon Bowles, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm afraid I don't have the figures to hand either. I know the numbers are low, but that isn't uncommon, even when it's a physical public meeting as opposed to a virtual public meeting. They don't attract hordes of people usually. It's a sort of slightly Victorian concept of hold the public meeting. The important bit of the consultation is probably actually what we do online these days. But anyway, we have complied with the law as interpreted by our solicitors, but we can certainly find the numbers and circulate if you wish, Chairman.
Yes, please.
We'll do that. In terms of the process going forward, there are a number of further consultations which have closed and reports are being prepared, subject to other workload. And so some of those should come to March Strategy Group and on to Council, in which case this Council will conclude them. There are further appraisals, as the portfolio holder has said. Clearly, we can't guarantee West Northamptonshire Council will continue with them. We hope it will. And of course, all members of this Council are members of West Northamptonshire Council at present. So you have the opportunity to encourage that to happen.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. We'll get them to you, Councillor Mowatt, in fact, all the strategy group.
Thank you.
Councillor Kilford, please.
I'd just like to reiterate my fellow councillors' comments and congratulations on the presentation of this report and the ones to follow. Yes, I noted the consultation and the figures were low, but if you look at the ratio, you've had 4 responses. Those 4 responses resulted in 8 amendments to the plan. So that shows that the consultation process, even low, did work. I've looked through the reports and I couldn't specifically see any comments from the parish council at all. Did we receive any? Have I missed any from them?
Hey, Simon, do you want to deal with that one, please?
Chairman, if the report doesn't identify comments from the parish council, no comments have been received.
Okay.
It does happen. Some parish councils are enthusiastic and provide many comments. Some let it pass them by.
Are they a consultee in their own right? Would we have emailed them specifically as opposed to relying on a website for them picking it up?
They are on a consultation list, all the parish councils are, so I would be very surprised indeed if they haven't had a specific invitation to comment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. There are no more. Alan, is there any more you want to say until we take it to the vote?
No, Chairman, I simply would obviously reiterate the statement about the stalwart efforts of the staff. Rhiannon and really worked really hard, and it's wonderful to see the quality of the work that they're able to produce under these specific circumstances. But no, I recommend that to Strategy Group that we forward this to Council for a final decision.
Thank you. Okay, Strategy Group, those who can, happy to recommend this to full Council, 6 recommendations as laid out on the title page. Please do so by indicated hand, please. And any opposed? Looks like that's unanimous, doesn't it? No opposes. That's great. That's 100%. Thank you very much. Let's move on, please, to item 2. We're going to talk now about Cretan conservation area. Over to you, Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Chairman. Same comments about the consultation. The timing was disturbed by the pandemic, of course. There was an online public meeting and it was attended by members of the public, it says here. We got, in this case, a consultation from the parish council, from Anglian Water and from 3 individuals through the usual channels. The responses received and the proposed actions are set out in the appendices A and B. responses were generally in support of the proposed conservation area, although there were 2 requests to changes to the boundary. The parish council agreed with the boundary changes that were suggested, except for that which proposed to include a row of buildings on Welford Road, citing that they're not of architectural merit. There was one request that the conservation area should not be extended to include the area of land to the north of Cretan Lodge. The proposal suggested extending the conservation area in 6 areas, and the largest of those extensions covered a number of fields. 3 extensions amended the boundary to reflect changes to property boundaries. It's often the case that when we work with available public documentation and our own records, we find that we've drawn a conservation area boundary through what is now the middle of somebody's garden, which doesn't make sense. And so obviously it makes sense to adjust the boundary accordingly. We have also suggested candidates for a local list, including 4 buildings outside of but very near to the conservation area. That should make it clear to members and the public that the local list is not constrained by the boundary of the conservation area. And as we usually do when considering conservation area appraisals and management plans, we have suggested some properties for Article 4 directions. So the conservation area appraisal and management plan has been through a consultation exercise. These results have been considered subject to some amendments. It's suggested that we go with the recommendation, Chairman, that the proposed conservation area boundary be designated, and that this should supersede the previous designation made in 1997, that the proposed changes to the conservation area proposal and management plan in response to representations be approved, that further minor editorial changes be made to reflect the fact that it will become a supplementary planning document according to point 4, that it would be adopted as a supplementary planning document, that the local list entries should be set out and should be agreed, and the Article 4 direction should be made and then go to further consultation work before being confirmed. That's the recommendation for members, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Any comments, please, from the meeting? No? Okay, I propose we go to a vote then. For those who are happy to recommend the 6 recommendations on the title page to go forward to council, please do so by the raised hand. And that looks unanimous. Thank you very much. Move on to number 3, which is Long Buckby.
Excuse me. Yes, Chairman. Long Buckby is probably better known than the previous 2 might be to members. Everybody knows about Long Buckby. And again, we've had the consultation as permitted by the pandemic, including an online public meeting. 13 responses were received for this consultation, both via email and the online survey. And some respondents to the online survey only provided their contact details, so they obviously wanted to be kept informed. Several responses expressed support. Also proposed further recognition of historic hedgerows. Suggestions to amend the appraisal have been proposed to reflect this. One respondent suggested extending the Article 4 direction to include the parish hall. However, it was not suggested that the Article 4 direction be extended in this case. A number of respondents objected to the conservation area designation full stop. The reasoning provided suggests that the conservation area was not necessary. However, it's not considered that the comments undermine the case for a designation or justified changes to the proposed boundary. Some minor changes to the text of the appraisal have been suggested. People, Chairman, often say that there are a number of listed structures on English heritage list, or historic England as we must call it these days, and so we don't need a conservation area. I think they fail to appreciate that it is, as its name suggests, an area and not just specific buildings, and it does say that it should be treated sympathetically when considering planning applications. So there have been some changes to the text, and some respondents were critical of the consultation process, but we stuck to what we say we will do in our statement of community involvement, having made suitable adjustments for the pandemic. I think otherwise it's fairly straightforward. The draft appraisal proposed the addition of 12 heritage assets to the Daventry District local list, which I presume will also be at least initially taken over by the new authority. They may have their own views on what a local list should be. And the Article 4 directions have been proposed for specific properties as before, limiting certain specific permitted development rights, just to make sure. And the whole point of this exercise, Chairman, is not that we stop development in a conservation area. It is that we control it to make sure that it maintains the integrity of the conservation area. As might be expected, the responses from Long Buckby consultees were quite extensive, and if you read them through, you can see that there is a thoughtful and comprehensive response to each one as given by the officers concerned. So there's really nothing more for me to say, Chairman, other than to remind members that the proposal is that we recommend that the proposed conservation area boundary be designated as a new conservation area. That might surprise some people. That the proposed changes to the conservation area appraisal and management plan in response to representations be approved. That the further minor editorial changes be made to reflect the fact that this will be in its final form. That the conservation area appraisal and management plan for Long Buckby then be adopted as a supplementary planning document, that the local list entries be agreed, and that the Article 4 directions be made so that they can then be worked on for further consultation before being confirmed. That's the proposal, Chairman. Again, disappointment that it can't be considered by Council in 2 weeks' time because that meeting's been cancelled.
Thank you, Councillor Chandler. Councillor Osborne.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, sir.
Okay, yeah, good report, brilliant. In fact, I said so when it first came out. The only thing I don't like is some constructive comments come from the village as well as a few sort of don't know what they're on about comments. What it does annoy me is the people that write in and don't tell you their name and address, anonymous. I wish people would be more positive. I don't care who they are, what they say, as long as they say who they are and what they say and where they come from, and not just put, no, I'm not giving you my name and address, or I don't support this, the article bits. But no, I support it. Very good. It's nice to have a new conservation area. So yes, you've got full local support for it from me, most definitely from me. That's from a parish level and the district level as well as the county level. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. Anybody else? Councillor Guildford.
Yes, again, like the others, an excellent report. Just a couple of things. One, not a criticism, just a lesson learned, because I noticed that we hadn't taken a tally of how many had attended an event, consultation event. So it might be worth us knowing, or, you know, taking it as part of the protocol or policy, that we record how many attend these events so that we know how many comments are coming from them. But on the other side of the coin, it was good to see that even comments received after the deadline were included and commented on. So just those two notes, but yes, in support of it.
Thank you, Councillor Guildford. Simon Bowers, is it practice to record the number that will attend a Zoom meeting or a face-to-face meeting? Is that part of our policy and processes?
I would expect that number to be recorded, and I agree with Councillor Guildford. It would have been better to include it in the report, so we'll certainly do so in future.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, looks like nobody else needs to speak or wishes to speak. I'd like then to propose we put it to a vote then for the 6 recommendations on the title page of the Longbuckby Conservative Area paper. Those of you who are happy to forward it to full council, recommend it to full council, please do so by the raised hand. Thank you, that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Preston Capes now, Councillor Chandler.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The same story regarding the consultation and a physical public meeting couldn't be safely held. We did get a response from the parish council and from Anglian Water and from 4 individuals. Again, either via online survey or email or a combination of those. The appendices will show you the responses and the proposed resulting actions. I hope you've had a chance to look at those. The responses were generally in support, but there were some requests for changes to the boundary. This seems to happen every time, Chairman. Several respondents, including the parish council, requested that an area of pasture between Charwelton Road and Old Forge Lane be included. The parish council requested that the schoolroom in Churchway should not be added to the local list because it's within the curtilage of the old rectory and rectory barn, which is a listed structure. Consequently, the schoolroom is already curtilage listed, and a suitable adjustment has been made to reflect that. Otherwise, the small changes to the boundary compared with when it was last reviewed in the 2020 years ago. So no reductions were proposed, but some increases just to tidy things up. The proposal also identifies candidates for the local list as elsewhere, including the site of medieval fish pond, side of but near to the conservation area. An area of archaeological interest, which in one of the responses to one of the consultations, and I can't remember which one, was mistakenly referred to as an architectural interest. These words can be confusing. We also have suggested specific properties for Article 4 directions to remove specific permitted development rights. Again, just a reminder, this is not to prevent change, it's to make sure that it is controlled and has the appropriate effect on confirming and continuing with the conservation area. Those Article 4 directions will be subject to further consultation before being confirmed, should council agree that they be added to the paperwork, as it were. So the conclusion there, Chairman, is that the Preston Capes Conservation Area Appraisal and Management Plan has been through a consultation exercise, the results of which are being considered. Subject to some amendments, it's suggested that it should be agreed and go forward as on page 107 of your papers, that the 6 recommendations that the proposed conservation area boundary as set out be designated, and that this supersedes the designation made in 2000, that the proposed changes to the conservation area appraisal and management plan in response to representations be approved, that further minor editorial changes be made to reflect the fact that it will be in an adoptable document, that the conservation area appraisal and management plan for Preston Capes then be adopted as a supplementary planning document, that the local list entries to Preston Capes set out be agreed, and that the Article 4 directions should be made and subject to further consultation. I think it's again worth reminding members of the public, Chairman, that conservation areas are not about stopping development or change, they are about controlling it. And a conservation area, once adopted, must be taken into account as a consideration, material consideration, in the processing of any planning application. Thank you, Chairman. That's the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Thank you for re-emphasising about conservation areas not preventing things being built. That is a misunderstanding sometimes by the public, especially some of in the villages where I've spoken to people about them. So I appreciate you at all possible times reminding everyone of that reality. Councillor Guildford, please.
And I think it's on that I'd like to talk about. I noticed that, Cretan Parish Council's local voice, they'd suggested amendments. I do worry that we don't listen to the local voice of the parish council when they request material changes, which is what their comments are here about asking for an additional piece to be included in the conservation area. And I do concur with the officer's comments that, it doesn't prevent development. But I do consider, having attended many planning application meetings, that it does give some added protection. That's what a conservation area does. It gives a bit more protection, doesn't prevent. So I would have preferred to have seen the local voice of the parish council listened to here, and this part of the recommendation had been amended, the plan, to include the local voice, the suggested extension to the conservation area.
Thank you. I'm sure the voices are listened. Whether they're acted upon is probably the subtlety. I don't know whether Alan or Simon want to respond to that. Councillor Chandler?
I would like to. Thank you, Chairman. Simply to say, as you've just said, that often we find that when people say they didn't listen to me, what they mean is they didn't agree with me. We do, of course, listen to and consider carefully all responses to any consultation, but they don't always lead to action.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Councillor Randall, please. You're still on mute. Councillor Randall, sorry, you're on mute.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah, this is just a general point, really, about conservation areas and changes within conservation areas. How do you let everybody know that there is a change to the conservation area and whether their property or shop is included? Because repeatedly within the town conservation area, there are retrospective planning applications coming through frequently now where people haven't sought planning permission. And repeatedly, you know, we've asked how, you know, you get this message across. Are they, you know, given a letter? Because it, you know, it's a real concern that all this planning is going ahead and no planning applications are in. People say that they aren't aware. So, you know, how do we make people aware? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Randall. Good question. Councillor Chandler, can you answer that, or would you like me to go to officers?
Well, I'll make a comment, Chairman, which is,
Okay.
as far as the conservation area is concerned, we use our usual channels. It's not sensible or even required that we should write to everybody, but we do use our usual extensive channels for communication to make sure that people are aware that there has been a conservation area designated, etc. When it comes to the particular restrictions imposed by Article 4 directions, those property owners are written to individually, Chairman.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Osborne, yes, please.
And it's right to say that a lot of people think that a retrospective planning application that comes in is wrong. But it isn't wrong. It's part of the planning system. There's nothing illegal. There's nothing wrong about somebody starting to do something without planning permission. When they're found out, they are asked to follow a certain line. There's still nothing wrong with it as long as they follow that line. So when somebody says people are doing it without planning permission, they're not doing it illegally. It's just a system they choose to follow. You could build a house and you could have to knock it down. Since I've been around at the council, I've known of 2 extensions, considerable extensions, that have been built that have been knocked down because they never went through the normal planning system. But there is not an illegal one, as long as when it's pointed out, they put in for proper planning permission. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Simon, is there any more you want to share on communication of these conservation plans?
Chairman, the portfolio holder has covered it admirably. The only thing I would probably add is to say that conservation areas are registered local land charges as well. So when a property is bought or sold,
okay,
that is brought to the attention of the purchaser for fairly obvious reasons.
Okay, Councillor Randall, does that clarify things to you? I see you got your hand up again.
Yes, sorry, no, that just seemed a very, very odd comment, because that could portray everybody that go ahead, do whatever you want, and if nobody reports you, don't worry about it. But if they do report you, you might take the risk of having it knocked down. That seems a very bizarre thing to say. You know, we either do need planning permission or we don't. That should be quite clear as far as odd.
Okay, thank you for that. Look, we are drifting away, but I do want this clarified, as this is a public meeting. Could an officer please clarify the legal position for us? Councillor Osborne may or may not get it right, but I just want a clear steer on this. Simon, can you give us that? Is that all right?
Chairman, I'm happy to. I think I know the position, but I would probably defer to Tony as the relevant exec director if he's comfortable. Otherwise, I'll deal with it, Tony.
No, I'm happy for you to deal with it, Simon.
In almost all circumstances, Chairman, work that requires planning permission can be carried out at risk, as Councillor Osborne said. It's clearly not desirable, and you're potentially taking a very significant risk. Build something and have to tear it down is expensive, disruptive, and so the onus very much is on the developer, the owner, to have got their ducks in a row before doing that. But ultimately, if they don't, in almost all cases, they're not breaking the law. Clearly, if they are served with a stop notice or one of those other regulations, or if they try and demolish a building in the conservation area, that is actually a criminal offence if you haven't got planning permission. And if it requires development consent, which is not something we control, that's for things like DERFT and new railways and things, then it is a criminal offence to carry out development that requires development consent without permission. But that really doesn't need to concern us here. For 99% of the cases, it is exactly as Councillor Osborne described. People's common sense tends to dictate they get planning permission before expending lots of money.
Okay, Councillor Randall, does that give you clarity? So Councillor Osborne was correct, and it's cleared up with Simon's articulate description of the process?
It is what it is then,
Okay.
Chairman.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your contribution. So we'd like to now go to the vote. If you're happy to recommend to full council those 6 elements in the recommendations for Western Cape's conservation area, please do so by the raised hand. Thank you. And any opposed? No. Unanimous. Okay. Chief Exec, we did have an urgent business we considered this afternoon and declined that. Is there any more urgent business for us today?
Go on, Chairman.
No, thank you very much. Okay, well, that then concludes our meeting. Thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you, Councillor Chandler, for presenting all those papers. You obviously earned your money this evening, or your allowance. And please have a safe evening, keep yourself safe, and we'll see you next time.